This session, what I really wanted to do is raise a lot of common questions that we get in the ecosystem, in the community, specific around Java. And what I'm trying to do is bring forward a lot of those common questions that have been asked that sometimes don't get exposed because of distance and borders and time zones. And so this is a bit of a general overview of our strategy around technical investments in Java, why we're making those choices, why we're not making some choices, and more importantly, the improvements we're bringing forward with a goal of trying to make you more productive developers in the role you play within the company you work at. So with that, I wanted to start with a little bit of a preamble. Does anyone know this book by chance? Does anyone? One does. And have you read it? You've read it. I'm not surprised. Okay. So if you're not familiar with this book, I highly encourage you, when you have the time, to read this. It's called The New Kingmakers, and there's a software analyst company out there called RedMonk, and one of the analysts at RedMonk is Stephen O'Grady. Now, you think sometimes analyst firms are more business-oriented, but RedMonk focuses its entire business model around understanding and analyzing the importance developers play in businesses. So you're not just there to write code. You're not just there to push something into production. You are actually influential in terms of technology decisions that your company is making. Now, we realized this in the Java space over 20 years ago. And that's why this morning's message that I had for all of you in terms of participation is so critical. Right? So in your enterprise, you actually have more power in the environment and the days we live in today than in the history of technology. Typically 10, 20, 30 years ago, decisions were made for you. You were forced to use certain languages, certain frameworks, certain solutions, and then expected to do something with it. Well, a lot of times those things that are decided for you don't actually accelerate your productivity. In some cases, it actually inhibited it. And basically the premise of Stephen's book, which, by the way, I think the title should not be The New Kingmakers, it should be The New Monarchy Makers. And I say that specifically because it's not just kings but queens who are also influential in technology these days. So he also touches upon that a little bit in terms of we need to increase the diversity in the landscape of who we include in our communities. We don't want to be exclusive, we want to be inclusive and bring in all genders, all backgrounds, all experiences, because again, as I said this morning, we learn better based on our differences than our similarities. So if you don't realize the power you have, after reading this book, you will get a better understanding of how critical a role you play in the company you work for. So let's go through some of the questions that typically arise, and I'm going to start with this one. 20 years of Java, sometimes it's viewed as legacy, dare I say, and a lot of times the perception is Java shrinking? So if you think about it, 20 years of history for Java has put it in a position for another 20 years. And what do I mean by that? It means all of the technology investments we've made year over year have been thoughtfully done to accelerate your productivity. Now, it's so easy nowadays to be enamored with new functionality that might be cool and cutting edge. But the question is that going to have long-term functionality and productivity for you 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out? Or think more importantly, the application that you're building, someone eventually is going to pick that up. We're not going to be working on the same project for the entirety of our career. And so in the Java space, we have been thoughtful for what we've brought forward. And that has led to something pretty amazing. Now, there's a lot of statistics out there. You can find the internet plastered with this. You know, what's the most popular language based on a myriad of criteria? And, you know, from a pragmatic standpoint, I'm not going to say Java is the best. Oh my God, that's heresy. Someone from the Java team at Oracle said Java is not the best. it should be best in terms of what you want it to do for you. So if you choose another language, it doesn't impact me. If you need to decide what is the best solution for the project you're working on, what is going to increase your productivity. Now, we at least know from data that because we've been thoughtful for the investments we've made, Java has proven to be successful for the last 20 years, and it still remains to be one of the top languages. But we don't need to get into a language war. We don't. Again, the choice is yours, and choice matters. But in that, there are statistics. So if you're, as I said, if you are the new monarchy makers and your company is deciding, should we continue to invest in Java, you need to be able to validate that with some information. And these are all proven statistics out there. It still remains to be the #1 programming language used in enterprises to this day, even after 20, well, oh my goodness, we're past 20 years. Next year is the 25th anniversary of Java. So Duke is getting more mature, but still offering functionality. There's reasons why it stays functional, and it's not just the technical investments we're putting in the language and in the runtime. It goes back again to what I said this morning about community. We understand that this is a circular relationship, and so we need to empower you with information and make you equally successful. Is anyone here part of the Latvian Java user group? Anyone? A couple of folks. I have to say this, some of the best knowledge transfer happens with peers from a different organization. And so I highly encourage you, if you're not part of a local user group, start to participate because you'll get a better understanding and perspective of actually the possibilities of what Java can do for you. Another thing that I highly recommend is if you have not started to subscribe to this, Java Magazine is a publication we at Oracle have actually been pushing out since 2011. It's bi-monthly, so it comes out every 2 months. It's a digital publication. It's free. Let me say that again. It's free. Oracle does not charge for this. There is no licensing fee for this. It's free, okay? So it is a technical publication. It's written by developers, so you're going to get a lot of best practices and use case information at the code level from this. And if you're interested in actually having something published, if you have an idea you want to share and express to your peers across boundaries, across countries, across the globe, contact me. I'm happy to get your information published. We're always looking for content, and again, it's not, sometimes the credibility increases in terms of value based on not what I write or what some of our engineers write, it's what you write. So I look forward to hearing from some of you maybe after this session. And then the other part is staying true to our virtues. Now, when Oracle acquired Sun, there was a lot of concern as far as will Oracle continue this notion of keeping Java free. It still, to this day, remains the most important tenet as far as why Java has value. And that comes through the OpenJDK project. The entire project itself is open. It's transparent in terms of what we do for development. So if you follow the project, you can actually see conversations happening about technical decisions. You can actually read and learn about live code commits. There's nothing hidden here. And I think because of that transparency, it gives Java a bit of a better reputation than other technologies. So it's important that these virtues that were there 20 years ago are virtues we stay true to over the next 20 years. And it has not changed. These all still to today remain true and intact. So there's things that we want to do. One is make Java even more open, and I'll get into that as far as what that means. We also want to be able to provide Java to you much more rapidly, because we understand that the world we live in is changing at a much faster pace. If you think about the cloud environments we live in, things are changing in months, if not days, and some of the legacy decisions we made as far as our release model impacted your ability to be productive. And then, of course, we want to continue investing in the ecosystem. So, again, some of the things that I talked about earlier, those are mission critical to ensure that your skills remain relevant, such that businesses understand the value as far as why they should be investing in Java. So, is Java free, by the way? It should be like a resounding yes. It is free. So, and let's get into why there has been some concerns about that. So, if you look at what Java was a few years ago, there's actually two versions of Java that Oracle pushed out. One was a free version, one was a commercial version. The commercial version had commercial features which you had to license. That inhibits productivity. So what did we do? We actually open sourced all of our closed enterprise services that you used to traditionally have to license for fee for the commercial paid version of Java. Those are now all open sourced. And what does that mean? That means the Oracle JDK, the commercial version, which used to be called Java SE Advanced, had all of those critical commercial features in it. Those are now free, which means you can use them in OpenJDK. The other challenge was, even though you may have been using Java for free, who knew that there was restrictions for using Java for free? Yes. You could only use it for something called general purpose computing, basically something on a desktop or a laptop. So if you wanted to use Java, say, in a smart kiosk or a payment system or a headless device, you actually had to license Java from Oracle for a cost. So there's restrictions in terms of using it for free previously. What have we done? We've actually lifted all of that. Not only did we open source all the commercial features, we actually made binary compatibility between Oracle JDK and OpenJDK. There is really no difference between the two. It's your choice which version you want to use within your enterprise. And the licensing scheme is now even easier. So we're now using GPL with class path exception. What does that mean? Basically, it means there is no restriction as far as your target environment. There is no restriction with it only being allowed for use for free on a laptop or a desktop. Do you want to put it into a payment system or a smart kiosk or a ticketing management system? You can do that. You are not encumbered with having to pay for a license from Oracle. One plug nickel. It's free. So where do I get the Oracle JDK from? You can get that from OTN. OpenJDK is still available on the OpenJDK project. Now, there's some subtleties in terms of the differences here, and I'm going to cover that a little bit later. But again, it's all about choice, and it's also about understanding that there's binary compatibility between both of the builds. Okay, number two. Is Java moving faster and slower? Well, I actually think 4 years ago, roughly, we were on a trajectory of moving like the Titanic. It was cumbersome. We had to pay down a lot of technical debt to accelerate being able to push Java out to you much faster. And we have to. It goes back to what I said earlier about the environments we're now playing in demands that. So if you want to stay innovative, if your projects need to come out faster, we as the stewards need to be able to deliver that to you to match that pace and that innovation. So I'm going to talk about release models a little bit right now, just to give you a context of what that means. So you might recall, which by the way, is anyone here on the latest build? Anyone here using Java 12? One? All right, let's see, sign of hands. Java 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Okay. Which, by the way, I had to speak in Singapore about a week ago. Most of the hands that went up said they were still on Java 5. And I about had a heart attack. I said, oh, we need to talk after this session. But no, so most of you are on Java 8. So you're familiar with the former major minor release process that we had. We had these releases that came out, massive number of features, sometimes in the hundreds, that would have support for multiple years. And that was then overlaid with another major release, some estimated years thereafter. Usually we're trying to target 2. Sometimes that would change. But what we want to do is zoom in a little bit on what that release looked like. So if we use Java 8 as an example, every 6 months we came out with an update release. And what did that update release have? It had performance, stability, and security updates to it, where it superseded the previous release. So when 8 update 20 shipped, it superseded version 8. That means there was no longer support provided on Java 8. Support was then provided on update 20. 6 months later after that, another update release, update 40. That superseded update 20. That then meant effectively Java update 20 was no longer supported. We provided free open support for U40. And of course, 6 months after that, U60, which is Java 8 a long-term support release? Is it? Yes. Show of hands, is Java 8? If you think it is, okay. It's a trick question. Java 8 is not a long-term support release. Java 8 Update 60 is a long-term support release. Because, as I said, every 6 months, the new update supersedes the previous update or previous version, then basically goes out of support. And then, of course, when we came in with another major release, we then, in this case, with Java 9, we would have moved to a dot model. We were on the trajectory of moving to a dot model. But what happened with Java 8? Java 8 was delayed, right? It was hard getting lambdas in. It was challenging, right? And what did that do? It delayed the availability of Java 9. So we wanted to push out Java 9 2 years after 8. It actually took 3 years. And what does that mean? That then delays every release thereafter as well. That's not fair to you. If there was already some functionality that was completed, we couldn't ship it to you because what happened is we would have something called feature drivers that was bound into a specific release. In the case of Java 8, it was lambdas, right? So it took a lot of work to complete lambdas. But we still had a lot of other functionality that was already ready, but because of the release structure we had, we couldn't give that to you until we actually finished lambdas. So that inhibited your opportunity for innovation. So what I'm trying to actually show here is we were already providing incremental releases to you every 6 months. And so it made sense to actually move to what we call a feature release model, which is every 6 months, we would have a release and give you functionality incremental way. Now, why is this possible? It's because we worked with the JCP and the community and got approval to shift from the major minor to a featured structure, or what we call a feature release train. Now, the numbering for this would have proved challenging, because if we kept the dot versioning, you can see that this would truly accelerate rather fast to dot 9.1, 9.2, every 6 months 9.3. Before you know it, you're at 9.100. And I'm sorry, but that type of versioning system is going to create a multitude of challenges. So what we did was we enhanced it such that we just did an incremental of 1. So instead of going from like update 20 to update 40, update 60, and now let's rev it by 1 and shift to Java 9, then you go Java update 9.20, 9.40, 9.6, and so on. We just moved from 9 to 10 to 11. So every 6 months, we're coming out with feature releases. This scares people off because they think they're getting the same volume of functionality that was in that long major release train. So like in Java 9, we had, I think, close to 126 or 122 features. That's an insane amount of functionality for your enterprise to try and absorb and take advantage of. In this incremental train, the populace of functionality is so much smaller. So does anyone recall how many features were shipped in Java 10? It's less than 100. It's less than 50. It's less than 20. 12. We only shipped 12 new features in Java 10. In Java 11, we shipped 17. And more recently, with Java 12 that just came out in March, there were 8. That means it's easier for you to pick up. You don't have to deal with waiting every 3 years for this huge, impactful, major release of features, which typically is challenging for any enterprise to pick up. But if you're getting functionality incrementally delivered to you, it's a much more approachable release model. Now, one of the things our customers also wanted was, well, if you're giving me support every 6 months on this incremental 6-month release train, there are still times where we as a business need something with long-term commercial support. And so if you recall with, between Java 7, Java 8, Java 9, the typical range right there was about 3 years. So every 3 years, we're now adopting this notion of a LTS, or long-term support release, for commercial support. So with Java 11, that is our commercially supported long-term support release. But in between, Java 10, Java 11, Java 13, Java 14, Java 15, you're getting support every 6 months. And because the impact of change is so narrow, it should be easier for you to migrate from one feature release to the next release. Now, of course, the next long-term support release would then be Java 17, and so on. It's important to note that this is not retroactive, so we're still committed to the support model that we have on previous releases. So if you might recall, in January, we shipped the last public version of Java 8. That was update, does anyone remember the number? Update U 211. Don't ask me why it's 211. Update 211 was the last public update of Java 8, and then what we recently shipped, Java Update U212, that now begins the period of commercial support if you want support on Java 8. Which, by the way, if people are thinking, well, oh my God, Oracle all of a sudden is charging for Java, we only charge for it when it reaches end of public updates. This is no different than what Sun did. Nothing has actually changed. So once a specific release reaches end of public update, if you need commercial support, it then goes into a paid model. So as I said, we changed the licensing. We are now creating 2 releases, Oracle JDK, Oracle OpenJDK. It's up to you to decide which one you want to use. If you want to stay on the free train, Oracle's OpenJDK distribution is the path you should be turning to, and I highly recommend it as well. Unless you need commercial support. It really is dependent on what your business model is. And then to sort of diagram this out, you get a feature release every 6 months, a lot of predictability. There's no guessing, is it going to come in 2 years? Is it going to come in 3 years? Am I going to get inundated with hundreds of new features? The answer is no. You can expect Java to ship every March and every September like a German train's schedule. German trains are on time, aren't they? No. Oh, God. It was a joke. Japanese trains. No, I was just in Japan, and I waited 2 hours for my train. That was an out-of-body experience. It was a bad joke. I apologize. Okay, so some things we want to talk about that also comes up typically is this notion of major-minor comparative with this new feature release model we're in. As if, are they the same thing? And I beg of you, please don't do that, because you're now comparing apples to oranges. As I said, the former model, multiple years between releases, and you can see just the volume of features over time. Now, I don't know about you, but I know when I'm doing my work, and we use Java internally at Oracle, even we go into feature shock when you're dealing with hundreds of new features to embrace. I mean, you need to talk to some of the folks in our database team. They lose their mind. But if you're getting them in incremental pace, as demonstrated here with Java 10, 11, and so on, it's a much easier proposition. So let's play a little game. There's the pessimist who says the feature release will be as disruptive as the major release trains. Nobody will be able to keep up. Well, I actually say that's false. And it's false because the major releases was extremely disruptive, again, because of the feature sets that were in it. Turning to a model where you're getting a few, sometimes, does anyone know how many features are targeted for Java 13 as of today? 2 so far. That should be extremely easy to pick up. And the fact that you already have EA builds available, you can start testing today. The other one is the optimist who says, this should be trivial. And I also think that's not correct, because there are times when moving from even feature releases to feature releases might require to redeploy your application and recompile your code. That's just the nature of software development. Like, we don't want things to break. We always want there to be backwards compatibility. But here's the thing. All of us are using Java in a way that's unique to our business needs. So in that varying degree, there will be times where what you experience may be different from another company or another peer. So expect there to be sometimes some trivial amount of update. Let's just be pragmatic. There will always be some level of plumbing that's necessary. And I think we need to be honest about that, embrace that. Nothing in life is as simple as we want it to be. No matter how much we simplify our release model, no matter how much we simplify access to the binaries and to the releases, there's always going to be some incremental work that's going to have to be done. I do it every day. Now, the realist, most feature releases will be easy to uptake, but this is relatively new, and there's still some risks. I completely agree with that, and I hope you do too. But it's important to understand what we're trying to do is reduce the pressure your organization has to deal with as you move to this 6-month release model, right? What we want to do is to have something that is predictable in terms of the schedule and more approachable when it comes to the functionality that we deliver. Okay, so a little bit of a recap. Predictability every 6 months. Do you remember the months that Java is now shipping? March and September. Next year, what is it going to be? March, September, right? See, predictability, we're getting there. All right. Incremental improvements, which means it accelerates your ability to innovate your applications, and you don't have to deal with the overhead of the disruptive major release model that we previously were pushing Java out in. Now, we understand that you also need some tools to deal with this, and I'm just going to go over a few of them that have been coming out since Java 9. So Java 8. So does anyone know JDEPs? It actually identifies your dependencies in your application, so you can start targeting and figuring out where your dependencies are as you move to the next release train. We also reduced JDepper scan. So in this tool, if there are any targets for deprecation, you can actually analyze your application and figure out things that may not be in a future release. But we will not just rip something out. We will have you prepared by going through a deprecation process and give you enough forewarning so you can prepare that at some point in time, even though something may get deprecated, we may not remove it, it may stay deprecated for a fair bit of time, but at some point it may be targeted for removal. And this tool will help you to understand where impacts in your use of Java is. Incubator modules. So, APIs that are not quite final, we still want to be able to expose that to you, because more importantly for us, we want your feedback. Like, that's mission critical. Goes back to the community involvement of this. You have a say in shaping and framing the technology. So we're releasing incubator modules. And then we also have preview features, right? So things that are maybe 90% done, but may not be 100% there. We want to also bring that forward to you so you can at least start testing with it early than have to wait a delayed period. But if a feature doesn't make it in one release, there should be some expectation that it will be there shortly in the future. And at the minimum you're going to wait is 6 months. And I think that's more reasonable than the 3-year model that we previously had. Okay. Another question we often get, and this is sometimes typical to the questions or the perceptions that Oracle is very draconian with how it develops Java. Is Oracle the only Java contributor? And the reality is, far from it. In fact, we have a whole ecosystem of not just companies, but individuals who are fixing and filing bugs and participating in the development process. And this is just an example for Java 11. I actually have one that I'm in the process of preparing to show the same type of data for Java 12, which I hope to show in the future. But the reality is this. As stewards, of course, we should be expected to pick up the lion's share of the responsibility for driving the contributions to the language. But we have to do this with you. I think that's just sort of like the modern approach nowadays is innovation happens when we have greater participation. It's been in the DNA in the Java ecosystem for 20 years, and we don't want to change that. Even if there's concerns with Oracle, the name, the brand, whatever it may be, for Java, it's mission critical for this notion of participatory development because that's how we accelerate innovation. Oh, I did have Java 12. I thought I had, oh, look at that. That's efficiency. So, similar chart for Java 12. This was not supposed to be in this deck, but I guess it stayed in there. I didn't know I had approval to use this, but yay. Okay. Take a picture. Click. All right. Did you get it? You got it. All right, good. Now, as I said, what if I need commercial support? And that may arise. Like, it happens, right? And so I want to talk a little bit about, this is where I shill for our commercial support part of the presentation, but I do at least want to introduce it to you because it is much more approachable than it used to be. If you were paying for Java in the past, if your enterprise is licensing Java for fee in the past, the model was this: high price, high discount, and a minimum buy of CPUs, whether you used it or not. And I'm sorry, but that to me is outrageous in this day and age because we're in this pay for what we use model. And so what we did is we transferred from high price, high discount to low price, low discount. Everything is published publicly. The prices are there. So if you want support on the desktop, and this is all correlated in terms of currency conversion as well, but in the US it's $2.50 per desktop, $25 per server at the maximum. At the maximum, if you need commercial support. And then from there, there's a tiered discount table that's published that you can then understand in terms of volume. If I have more usage on desktops, of course the price goes down. And this is important because your enterprise usage changes, right? So in 1 year, I might grow and expand my needs, and I need more desktops running Java. The following year, I may not have that same dependency. So we shouldn't expect you to pay the same price if you need that year over year, right? So it's important to understand it's pay for what you use. That's all I'm going to talk about in terms of selling now. That's it. All right. So what are some of the new opportunities in the Java space? This is important because one of the things we've introduced now that we've moved to the 6-month release model is this notion of early access builds. And that's critically important, especially if you want to understand if a new investment area is going to bring value to you. And that means all of these projects that we're working on are available to you today to start absorbing, testing, providing us feedback. First is Project Valhalla. So if anyone's, we all know Java's good in terms of with data. What we want to do is optimize. With code, we want to optimize that with data. My favorite project is actually Panama because if anyone's in the machine learning and AI space, this project is oriented around making Java optimized for ML and AI. Does anyone remember JNI? Ooh, I'm so sorry. I apologize for JNI from the bottom of my heart. So, and this really should help out for anyone that was using JNI in the past. Project Panama is definitely a project to target if you're in the ML and AI space. Portola is interesting as well. As we've seen in this world of the explosion of cloud, containers are growing and being spun up in hundreds, if not thousands of instances. And so we want to optimize Java to run in a containerized footprint in a small enough form factor where only the libraries and the APIs that are necessary will run in that. And guess what? It's easy to spin up a lot of instances and containers, but that comes at some cost. And so we want to make sure you're not having any technical debt in terms of size of your runtime inside of a container. And so we're putting some efforts in that in Project Portola. Amber is one of those interesting projects. If you have not heard Brian Getz, who's our language architect, yet, I highly recommend you go onto YouTube. He has several presentations out there on Amber. But at the end of the day, one of the challenges we've always faced as stewards of the language is the verbosity of the language itself. It's not approachable as we should want it to be. We need to simplify it such that it still is not only easy to write, but easier to read. Because as I said earlier, someone is eventually going to pick up your project, and reading verbose code, that costs money. That costs time. That costs effort. And so we want to simplify the language in a way that accelerates your coding ability. I'm not going to go too much into Loom. I'm just I'm spinning myself up on fibers and multi-concurrency. But I will talk about Scala. And this is one of those important things, which I think it's it's obvious to everyone that the infrastructure within which we deliver Java to you is outdated. So we're exploring things like GitHub as a mechanism to make Java available to you. That's an ongoing project. I would highly recommend, if you want to read what's actively happening, the mailing list on Scala is probably the mailing list I read the most out of these 6 projects. And for me, accessibility is the most important thing. And we need to improve the accessibility of the technology to you. Okay. Early access releases, as I mentioned earlier. You don't have to wait anymore until a release drops to start testing and playing with it. You can actually start using it today. So when Java 12 shipped, at the same time, early access builds of Java 13 were already available. And they are updated on almost a daily basis. So you can get early access builds every day, which means you can start preparing for the eventuality when, if you are going to shift to the 6-month release train, you can prepare yourself for that time when the general availability of Java 13 drops in September, which it's already on the public schedule. Java 13 is going to drop on September 17th, if I'm correct. So there's already a target there, which means when Java 13 drops in September, early access builds of Java 14 will already be there for you. So you have basically what I'm saying is there's no delay anymore. There should be no concern about what is coming, when is it coming, when can I start testing. And so I highly encourage you to start playing around with some of our EA builds. I'm going to skip the summary. Hopefully you got a bit of a sense of some of the concerns and the questions that we have out in the ecosystem, and hopefully this helps simplify some of those concerns and address them. But I did want to leave you with this, and hopefully you screenshot this and make use of it, because I find this something of great value when I share it. Again, we live in this world of border separation, distance, and it's not sometimes easy to understand what's happening, but at the same time, you need to stay connected. And one of the best things you can do is follow the OpenJDK project. And I say that with all sincerity because of the transparency within which we do our development. Right? This is no longer a world we live in where we live in this sort of closed source, closed communications environment. The expectation should be everything should be transparent, read, and accessible. Go to OpenJDK, follow the projects of interest to you. The mailing lists are there, and read them at your own discretion when you have the time. But it's periodically good to check in. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to invest in ourselves such that we stay productive as developers in the role that you have. You have to make the time. You really do. The other one is we have a blog. It keeps updates on everything we're doing at a major level instead of at a micro level. So if you want to sort of strategic decisions where we are making or not doing, or what we are investing in or what we're not investing in, you can read our blog. I highly encourage it. Highly encourage it. And then lastly, because we're all part of the social media fabric, these are just a few of the people in the Java development team at Oracle that are actively writing, who are talking about the work that they're doing. And so I know we all have time to pick up our phone. I know we're all on social media. Most of us are on Twitter. If you're reading about hashtag cats, great. But you know what? It might be good some days to just check in and see what some of these voices are saying on the project work that they're doing, because it'll spark some interest and it might actually further your exploration into a specific topic area that you might have interest in, instead of waiting multiple years and then having the fear of, I didn't know about that. So I ask that you check in every once in a while. With that, I was hoping to open it up for questions as best I can. Like if it's specific to your company, I may have to offline it, but I would love to be able to take questions at this time, if you have any, unless I'm keeping you from coffee or other activities. Or is it happy hour yet? What time is it? No, it's too early for happy hour. When's the party again tonight? 7? Yeah? All right. Boy, this is a long time to wait, isn't it? Ooh, all right. Well, if anyone wants to go to happy hour at 3:30 with me, I'm happy to take you out. Just for 3:30 though, just for half an hour. No questions? Really? I couldn't have answered all of your concerns that are stirring in your head. All right, if you don't want to ask questions now, yeah. Yeah. Is that Hugh?
Yes.
All right, so just a little, let me set some context here. I know Hugh, and I know he's going to heckle me, but that's okay. No, okay.
It's more about the simplification of the language. Like
Yeah.
Kotlin is popular in many cases because it's like some people say it's better Java. I'm from a company, Lightbend, behind
Yes.
Scala, and
Yep.
Scala is going through a transformation to make it more appealing to like Python and JavaScript developers. What about Java?
Well, so part of that's a two-part question. So one is, I'll go back to one of the projects that I talked about, which was Project Amber, right? So it's meant to actually simplify the mechanics of how the language is written, right? And so we want to make it more approachable from that perspective. And you're right, Kotlin, Scala, a lot of these new modern languages are offering us ideas as far as what direction we can and should be taking Java as well. The challenge, I shouldn't say it's a challenge, it's actually a respect for what we've done historically, which is this. We want to be thoughtful in terms of what we introduce, even if it's from a simplification standpoint, as long as it doesn't break what your former investments are in. Like, it's easy to introduce change, but if it in any way impacts what your companies have invested in and it breaks backwards compatibility, that's a problem. That's a significant problem. So Project Amber is on that way towards that journey. The second thing is we introduced Repple, right? So Repple is something that's extremely unique in that now even someone who's learning the language has an easier approach to be able to pick it up without having to write a volume of code just to do and write a sample small little application. So there are steps that we're taking in a thoughtful way. Repple from let's introduce a new generation of developers to Java from an approachability standpoint, and then of course from the language perspective, Project Amber. Yeah. And as I said, there are 2 sessions, if I recall, that are online. One is from Devox, I believe, that Brian Getz did, talking more critical deep dive details on Amber. And I believe he just spoke at QCon New York. And I believe that session may be online shortly. And if you don't have access to it or you can't find it, seriously, just drop me a note. I'll go dig it up and send you the link. I mean, most of this has been archived somewhere, but I'm happy to do the heavy lifting for you. Yeah, which, by the way, love the Lightbend team. You're extremely passionate development team, and it shows you. I mean, I myself am learning from Hugh and his team as well in terms of how they engage community, and all applause to you, seriously. 'Cause I don't have all the answers. We have the answers together, right? Okay. comments, critiques, things you want, things you don't want. Okay? Oh, yeah. I want those too. Yes. Help me get it there. Yes. Yes. Work is going into that. Absolutely. I just wish we could offer it sooner. For sure. For sure.